The silver key to my penthouse felt heavy in my hand, but I didn't use it. Instead, I waited in the stairwell of the 22nd floor, checking my watch. It was 3:14 p.m. My wife, Elena, thought I was currently at a tech conference in London, delivering a keynote speech. She didn't know that the event had been moved to a virtual format weeks ago. She didn't know that instead of a hotel in Mayfair, I was standing 20 feet away from our front door, watching a man she called our financial advisor enter our home with his own key. They thought they were the ones managing my assets, but they were about to find out that I had spent the last 72 hours auditing every lie they had ever told me. Most people crumble when they discover a double cross. I don't. I'm a software engineer, I don't get emotional. I find the bug in the system and I patch it out permanently. This wasn't going to be a messy divorce. It was going to be a total system reboot. Before I reveal the digital trap I set for them, I want to see who is watching this right now. Please comment below where you are watching this from and what time is it there. My name is Elias, and I am 31 years old. For the last 5 years, I thought I was building a legacy. I had a booming cybersecurity firm, a woman I adored, and a trusted inner circle. But I realized too late that the people closest to you are the ones who know exactly where your firewalls are the weakest. The glitches started appearing 6 months ago. Small, unexplained withdrawals from our secondary investment accounts. Elena's sudden, charity galas, that required her to stay at downtown hotels for prep work. And then there was Julian. A man I'd helped get a job, a man I'd invited to every family dinner. I noticed the way his phone would light up with encrypted messages every time I left the room. In my world, if you see a pattern once, it's an anomaly. If you see it twice, it's a security breach. I told them I was taking a red-eye flight to the UK. I even let Elena drive me to the airport and watched her wave goodbye. As soon as her car pulled away, I took an Uber to a rental apartment I'd leased under a different name. I spent the next 2 days watching the data. I didn't need to hire a private investigator, I just needed to follow the breadcrumbs. I tracked the smart home logs, the thermostat adjustments, and the unauthorized logins on our home network. By Tuesday afternoon, I had enough data to realize that my advisor wasn't just managing my money, he was moving into my life. I entered the penthouse through the service elevator used by staff. The apartment was filled with the smell of expensive cigars. Julian's brand. I didn't rush into the living room to catch them. I walked straight to my home office, sat in my ergonomic chair, and opened my laptop. I could hear them in the kitchen, clinking glasses of the vintage champagne I had bought to celebrate our upcoming anniversary. They were laughing about a bad investment Julian had convinced me to make, an investment that was actually a shell company they both controlled. I didn't feel a surge of anger. I felt a surge of precision. I hit a single key on my laptop, and every smart device in the house instantly synchronized. The lights dimmed to a cold, surgical blue. The music they were playing cut out, replaced by a low, rhythmic hum. I got up from my desk and walked into the kitchen. They were standing by the island, Julian with his arm around Elena's waist, still holding the bottle. When they saw me, Julian dropped the glass. It didn't just break. It shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces against the marble, a perfect metaphor for their future. Elias, Elena gasped, her hand flying to her throat. You're supposed to be in London. The flight landed exactly where I needed it to, Elena, I said, leaning against the doorframe. I looked at Julian, who was already trying to hide the cigar behind his back. And Julian, don't worry about the cigar. The smoke sensors are already disabled. Just like your access to my firm's payroll. Julian tried to puff out his chest, stepping forward with a look of fake bravado. Look, man, we can talk about this. It's a misunderstanding. We were just celebrating a new deal. I've already seen the deal, Julian, I interrupted, sliding a tablet across the counter toward them. It showed a real-time map of the offshore account they had opened together, now showing a balance of 0. I've spent the last hour rerouting the investments you stole back into a trust for my employees. You have 15 minutes to gather your things. Elena, the prenuptial agreement you signed has an infidelity clause that you clearly forgot to read. As of 5 minutes ago, your credit cards are as empty as your excuses. I stood there, calm and immovable, watching the panic set in. They weren't looking at a grieving husband. They were looking at the man who held every string of their existence in his hands. The silence in the kitchen was heavier than the panic. Julian's mouth was moving, but no sound was coming out. He looked at the tablet, then at me, then at the empty bottle of champagne. He realized in that moment that he wasn't just losing a friend or a lover, he was losing the architect of his entire lifestyle. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a raised voice. I simply pulled out my phone and set a timer for 15 minutes. The red numbers started counting down on the screen, reflecting off the polished marble of the island. 15 minutes, Julian. If you're still in this building when that timer hits 0, the security team I've already briefed will escort you out in front of every neighbor on this floor. And Elena, don't bother reaching for your jewelry box. Those pieces were purchased with company funds that are now part of a legal hold. Elena finally found her voice, but it was shrill, desperate. You can't just freeze me out, Elias. We've been married for 5 years. I built this life with you. No, I corrected her, my voice as flat as a dial tone. I built the life. You just decorated the betrayal. You thought because I spent my days behind a screen that I wasn't looking at the world around me. But in my line of work, we don't just build walls, we build traps for people who think they're smarter than the system. Julian tried to move toward the door, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. I'll sue you for this, Elias. You can't just move money around like that. It's illegal. I actually smiled then. It was the first time I had felt a genuine spark of amusement in months. Julian, you're a financial advisor who diverted $3 million into a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. I didn't move the money. I simply reported the unauthorized transaction to the bank and provided them with the digital signature you used, from my own office computer. You didn't just steal from me, you left a fingerprint on the safe. The bank has already flagged the account. If you want to talk to a judge, I'm sure the DA will be happy to schedule a meeting. The color drained from Julian's face. He knew I had him. He turned and ran toward the guest room to grab his briefcase, leaving Elena standing there alone. She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears that I knew were more about her bank balance than our marriage. She tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back, keeping the kitchen island between us. Elias, please. We can go to therapy. We can fix the glitch. It was just a mistake. A glitch is a one-time error in the code, Elena. This was a feature of your personality. You've been planning this for 2 years. I found the emails. I found the travel logs. You weren't at galas. You were scouting apartments in Paris with my money. I didn't just find out today. I've been waiting for you to reach the final stage so that when I cut the cord, there was nothing left for you to fall back on. The timer on my phone hit 10 minutes. I walked out of the kitchen and into my office, locking the door behind me. I listened to the sounds of them scurrying through the penthouse, the slamming of drawers, the frantic whispers, the sound of a suitcase being zipped in a hurry. Most people would have been in the bedroom, crying over the wedding photos or demanding answers. But I already had the answers. I had the logs. I had the truth. At 3:30 p.m. sharp, the timer went off. I opened the office door. Julian was already at the elevator, his head down, refusing to look back. Elena was standing at the threshold of the front door, a single designer suitcase in her hand. She looked around the penthouse one last time, realizing that the luxury, the security, and the status were all evaporating. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered. "That's an external variable, Elena. It's no longer part of my environment," I replied. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. For the next 2 hours, the silence was absolute. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't call a friend. I sat in the dark and watched the city lights flicker on through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My phone buzzed with dozens of frantic texts from Julian's wife, whom I had BCC'd on the entire evidence folder 10 minutes after I walked into the kitchen. The dominoes were falling across the city, and I didn't have to lift a finger to push them. By the end of the week, the firm was restructured. Julian's name was scrubbed from every contract. Elena was staying in a budget motel, discovering that her social circle vanished the moment her credit card stopped working. My lawyer called to tell me the settlement was going to be effortless. Elena was so terrified of the fraud evidence I held that she was willing to walk away with nothing just to stay out of a courtroom. I stood on my balcony, looking out at the horizon. I had lost a wife and a partner, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I realized that for 5 years, I had been maintaining a system that was full of malware. I had been working to support people who were actively trying to delete me. The lesson I learned wasn't about love or friendship. It was about architecture. You can have the most expensive materials and the most beautiful design, but if the foundation is built on a lie, the structure will eventually fail. Don't wait for it to collapse on your head. Be the one who triggers the controlled demolition. Now, I wake up in a house that is quiet, clean, and completely secure. I'm not just the man behind the screen anymore. I'm the man who owns the system. And for the first time, I'm not looking for bugs. I'm looking at the future.